we're discussing today is courage, the courage to do what is necessary. And I put that as a title because a lot of times courage becomes like I'll do it when we set up conditions for it. I'll do it if, and one of those conditions is actually, you hear a lot of this in the world, is fear. Is that when I get over my fear, I'll do this thing. But one of my favorite quotes around courage is, the cave that you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek, by Joseph Campbell. And it doesn't put any conditions on fear. It's like, you got to enter it whether you fear it or not, but the treasure that you seek is there. It doesn't say when you get over your fear, enter the cave. In fact, the biggest, and that's how we define courage as well, is that the courage is movement forward or going in a direction or doing something or being something despite the fear. Not when you eliminate fear, not when you eliminate, the other piece of this is risk. Not when you completely eliminate risk. Is despite the risk, despite the fear, we're taking action towards the thing that matters to us, which connects to purpose, as Scott talked about. Is that in this is why there needs to be a lot of alignment. And I want to share a little bit about my experience with this, and I want you to connect to it in your own journey. So my first grip with connection was with fear or with courage was not when I need to start a business or I need to go in the direction that matters to me. Actually, it was the courage to just speak up, the courage to just say what was in my heart. And that was the hardest thing for me, because I spent the first 30 plus years of my life just staying quiet. And for somebody else, that might have been a normal thing to speak up. But for me, it wasn't, even though I always had good thoughts, even though I always had good ideas, even though I wanted to share what was in my heart, I never said anything. And the hardest piece of that was to just jump and do the thing. I remember even in like social situations, for me to just speak up, I would have to prep myself for hours. You know what? I would anticipate, like, if they say this, I'm gonna say this. If they say this, I'm gonna say this. And most of those scenarios never happened to begin with, to be honest. But I had to literally train my mind that was so afraid of all kinds of vague things that never happened. And also it looked at it as risk, that, you know what, if I did this, something will happen. And then I never knew what that was. And this is why whenever I'm working with clients, in their mind, they think that the fear is holding them back. It's actually not the fear. It's the fact that they don't want to deal with the fear, the fact that they don't want to go through the fear. It's never that I'm going to get over the fear, get over the risk. Sometimes we mitigate risk and do other things, but I want you to consider this in your life. What is the thing that is courageous for you? Because what is courageous to you and me will be two different things. So that was my first encounter, I would say, in more conscious way with courage. I had to learn to speak up what was important to me, what was truthful to me, what was necessary in the moment. And to be honest, it has gotten a lot easier, but it hasn't completely gotten eliminated. There are times where I always have fear, whether it's in this channel, social media, in social settings. There's always a part of me that wants to hold back that side. But then there's a decision every moment. Now, I want to talk about, in that decision is where courage comes in. And another time that courage, and I'm talking about general themes of courage that showed up, was when I made a decision to go on my own on the entrepreneurial journey versus not. And that was a big risk, to go towards something that I don't understand. I don't know. I don't know how to make it work. And worst of all, starting a startup and quitting the career that I was in. Well, why did I make the decision, even though I was deathly afraid of doing that thing? Not only afraid of what was going to happen, but afraid of my own thoughts, running around. What if you fail? What if this doesn't work out? What if you fail your family? What if what everybody said was right? And then on top of that, there was the social pressure of conforming to other people's ways. And on top of that, there was the uncertainty of doing all that stuff. And if you're looking at it from a fear point of view, if you really want to think about fear, most people's biggest fear is not that something is going to go wrong, but what other people are going to think in the process. Would they consider them a failure? What if they make a mistake? And these are not natural fears. These are trained fears. Why? Because in school systems and in our homes, we're taught to fear these things. If you don't, if you don't, if you don't meet my expectations, well, I'll be disappointed in you, whether it's a parent or a teacher or whoever. The natural fear is that we all want to be accepted within our little social sphere. That's our hardwired into our DNA. So we look at it as death when we're not accepted. But I don't want to give fear a lot of energy. When I jumped towards the entrepreneurial path, it was scary. It was especially because I had to take care of my family. I completely switched careers. I didn't know what I was doing for years. For 2-3 years, I had no idea what I was doing, but I was figuring it out because there was a bigger purpose behind it. It wasn't just about making money. It wasn't just about creating a lifestyle. It was about living what was important to me. And that's where I want to get you to think about is the courage to be. And that usually connects to your identity, to your potential, to your purpose. Where do you need to be in your life? Where do you need to make a difficult decision to be? It's not just about doing. There's also the courage to do in this case, which was my decision to jump towards entrepreneurial path. But the B was a much difficult, the courage to be was a much difficult situation because I had to be okay with me taking these risks with myself because I had to own the consequences of all that stuff. But here's an amazing thing. That's why I want to take you back to that code. The cave that you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. That was the treasure. The treasure was not just because I built a business and I have money. The treasure was that it gave me freedom. The treasure was that my ability to speak up grew with me, that my ability to lead grew with me. I was able to take care of a lot more people. I was able to do a lot of things that I wouldn't have been able to do then. It wasn't just about a business. It was a bigger decision about my path. And before, when I talked about the courage to express, that started getting amplified with this new path because I had to learn to express myself. Without that, it's very hard to build any kind of business because you have to communicate, you have to share ideas, you have to go and get on sales calls, you have to market, you have to do all of that stuff. So and I want you to look at these themes in your life because they show up every time for most human beings. And then the next encounter that I had with courage was the courage to love. And that is very hard. And most people think that love comes easy to us. It doesn't because our ego comes first. We think of ourselves first. But probably the hardest one is that how can I love the people around me who might oppose me? Can I love the people around me that might not understand what I'm saying? Can I love the people around me that might reject me? Can I love the people while going through struggles? This is why you don't see families last that long. This is why you don't see friendships last that long. This is why you don't see relationships, intimate relationships, partnerships last that long because people say that through thick and thin, through struggle and all that stuff. But when the reality hits, a lot of people will back up and back down. Because love is actually hard because you have to put aside a lot of your own internal struggles. To this day, it's a challenge for me. To this day, I have to show up every day and start with that intention that love takes courage. And in fact, it pushes to a point, can you love your enemies? Because it's your enemies are pushing you towards protecting your family and doing all sorts of stuff that you're doing. And in fact, that was one of the biggest values for ancient people was that they honored and respected their enemies. It wasn't that they hated. Nowadays, there's this narrative that you should hate your enemies. Why? They're people that are taking care of their families, doing their own things, and providing. Yes, you might be in conflict, but if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be as motivated to take care of yourself, your family, your country, and all that stuff. It's the same reason why, even though a tiger might be a gazelle's enemy, a gazelle is strong because of the tiger. not if the tigers go away over time, the gazelle would get weaker and weaker and weaker because it's not running away from anything. It's not protecting itself from anything. And so where is that courage to love there? And here's how it shows up. With the younger people, it shows up as, you know what, I'm not ready for a relationship. I'm not ready for a family. how do you know that the courage, once you take that first step, the rest of the courage will show up for you? You will deal with the fear. But they're like, oh, when I with this thing, then I'll move forward. On the old people who are on the older end, it shows up as, I already have a family. I can't risk destroying it. So they don't speak up. They don't connect. They don't challenge. They don't grow together. So they stay in where they were a long time ago. In fact, resentment builds up and then relationship goes down. Same thing happens with team members in partnerships. People don't speak up and then it goes sideways. So the courage to express is not there. And then they will a lot of times blame fear for it. But fear is simply a signal from your body that says, pay attention, there's a risk involved. Now, the question you need to answer is whether or not that risk is worth it on the path for you to becoming whoever you're becoming. And then another time when I was exposed to courage was the courage to grow. I had to learn to grow. I had to learn to learn. Most of the things that I know now, I didn't know 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I had to learn. We have a gift, a potential to learn, but it's not given. It takes effort. It's scary to say that I'm going to learn this and do it as well and put it out there and I will deliver value, but it's not as easy to do it. Why? Because there's risk involved in the process. And we fall into the trap of thinking that fear is bigger than the decision to be courageous. I don't think it is. I think fear gets a lot of credit for this stuff. Is just understanding why fear is there. Most of the time, fear is there to protect us from dangers, and most of dangers around us are not dangers anymore. This is why I said last time in our training, actually was what's his name? Nawal Ravikant, who said this, that as long as you don't die and you don't have financial ruin, most risks are completely justifiable, because your fear centers have developed to keep you protected from other animals and other human beings who might attack you, other tribes and other animals. But in most of our situations, that's not true. Nobody's sitting there worrying about animals or anybody, unless you live in a very remote area and you're surrounded by bears and mountain lions and all kinds of things. Even then, you probably have better tools than a mountain lion. You probably have a gun. But the thing to remember here is that we've been taught to think way too much about the fear, but not the decision to make a decision to grow towards the person who can make courageous decisions. And so that first step towards growing takes courage. So in my case, that was courage with everything. I had to put aside my beliefs and values. I literally had to put aside my belief in my religion, my belief in my faith, my belief in my traditions, because a lot of them were not working. And then I had to relearn it in a way that applied to me. And that is one of the hardest things, because we don't see how much we operate on those beliefs that we're brought up in, but we never question them. And again, this is not for average people to listen to it, but if you're a leader and you're leading other people, if you have not questioned everything that you've been taught, you're likely following somebody else's train of thought and thinking that it's yours. I'm not saying reject, but that questioning takes courage, because as soon as you question, for example, if you question what you're taught by your parents, by your tradition, by your culture, by your all that stuff, every one of those feels risky inside. If you've ever done it, you will know it feels like dying a lot of times. Even some simple things as, does God exist? It was scary for me to question that. Now, for most people, if I ask that question in social settings, it would be, most people in my context will be like, no, you shouldn't be asking that. But the reality is that when I started asking that question, that took me closer to the truth, not away from the truth. But the path to it was very scary, and it took courage to go through that fear. And then the other piece was the courage to serve or contribute. And this is where a lot of people have aspirations to serve and contribute. But the problem is that most people haven't gone over their own stuff to even go there. They will do certain things, but then in the process, they realize that their stuff shows up more than other. For example, today I was on a call with a few business owners, And we were talking about sales, and this business owner kept saying, it's like, I need to make this high ticket sale. It will change everything. And everything he was saying, he was thinking of himself. It will change his lifestyle. It would be, but he wasn't thinking about the client who he was about to contribute to and serve. Like, and he was freaked out. He's like, it's the biggest, highest offer that I've given, this and that, and I could see it, and I've been there, and I get it. I'm like, do you notice your energy? How like I literally felt like you were pushing me off as soon as you got on the call. And he didn't even say anything. I could feel it in his energy. That's the energy that you're giving to the client, because the client knows that you're only thinking about yourself, even though he actually wants to serve the client, but he hasn't done the work to get over that thing. And that requires courage to say that, what, I have needs, but let me put a pause and see if I can contribute here. And there's one of my favorite quotes, it might have been by Brian Tracy or one of these guys, said that when you've served enough people, when you've contributed to enough people, you will get what you want. And it's a lot of people will say, well, no, there are a lot of people who serve and work hard and all that stuff. No. They haven't done that. Their initial primary intention is not that, if you dig deeper. And so that showed up in my work, because it was very easy to make sales. After you learn the skill set of sale, it's very easy to make sales. But there are times where you need to make a decision. I got off a call last week with a potential client. It was very interesting. I actually saw a message from him. He was picking two business paths. One was around went in one direction, the other one there. The one in this direction, I would help him out because I have a program for that. The other direction, he will go on his own, find another person to help him out. And while I was going through the process, it was two sides to me. It's like, one side, I'll get a client. The other side, this person will go towards what matters to him. And the ethical side of me says no. And I had to literally say it like that. I mean, like, I'm very tempted to sell you my program. But, and it's still aligned to some degree, but what it sounds like is you need to go in this other direction. And it was very interesting. And even though it was hard to say it in the moment, right after that, I felt a sense of relief that my conscience was like, oh no, I agree with you. And then he actually got a very deep session out of it. It was interesting. He just posted something in my group as a credibility thing. Thanks to Faisal, I got my first client in this area because he had the confidence in me. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. And I didn't know if he was going to come back, and I don't even know if he would, but he thought it necessary to post that because it was because of that session. He didn't pay me. He didn't do anything. It doesn't matter if you create because I've seen people who create not for profit organization. I've seen people who go towards causes and purposes. I've seen people who go towards missions on religious things, but they always carry their own ego with them. And it is always with us. But when you really go deep down, you realize even with those causes that they have volunteered, they're thinking of themselves, not other people. They haven't realized that that courage to serve, they haven't made a decision around that. It looks like they have, but when you go deeper, all they're thinking about is themselves. And so, and really the point of this training is for you to I want you to follow that narrative in your own life, the courage to express, the courage to be, the courage to do, the courage to serve. What is happening in different parts, because that narrative will decide how you make your next decision of courage or not. It will not be your fears. It will be how that story plays out in your mind. Because you know plenty of people who make decisions based on fear. So what is holding you back? And it's not fear, it's the lack of courage to make a decision that matters to your growth. And I'll leave it at that. I wanted to make this very personal because we all have a story, we all have a journey, and showing up with courage I think is a daily battle. Whether it's in love, in your relationship, whether it's in your business, or whether it's in you dealing with your own thoughts and emotions, or in your spiritual journey, it's a battle. In fact, that's a harder battle than the outside physical battle that you have to deal with, struggle with making money and other things. And if you're not showing up with the intention to face that difficulty and face those demons, it's likely either you're in denial, or it is that you're making decisions knowing that at some level that you shouldn't be making those decisions. Whether that's in your relationships with yourself, in your business, in your purpose, in your spiritual life. And again, my role here is not to judge because it's difficult for all of us, including me. My role is for you to pay attention to it and make decisions that matter to you towards your potential. Because if you care about your potential as a leader and to serve other people, to contribute, to leave a legacy, this is the starting point, I would say, is courage. I'll leave it at that. I'd love to hear from everybody. If you can put in the chat, what was your biggest insight? And then we'll have a short discussion. This week, we're going to be going much deeper into this on the Thursday session. So we're going to go much deeper there. But I'd love to hear your insights right now. And this week, I want you to consider this, what's happening in your mind, in your life when it comes to decisions around courage or not. But what was your biggest insight today? And hopefully I was able to communicate with the baby face that Peter pointed out. Give you guys a few more seconds. So we're getting a few shares here. Scott, having the courage to serve and contribute. Peter, I can't exactly remember the words. I'll have to wait for the replay. But in the first few minutes, you said something along the lines, people think they're afraid of what is on the other side of fear, not the fear itself. Yeah. There's more to it, but go deeper into it. We'll have a deeper discussion on Thursday. But yeah, fear gets a lot more credit than it needs to, because fear to me is a natural part of who we are. It's always going to be with you. How we react to it and make decisions is more of a question. I like the gazelle is strong because of the line, not despite it. Yeah, the first time I heard that, it was in a philosophy lecture, and I was like, holy shoot. We're always trying to get rid of all these lions and tigers. I'm like, why? That's the thing that is helping us be stronger. That's why the Roman Empire always needed enemies, because they wouldn't have been able to sustain the empire. Scott, I have to identify that cave. By the way, the enemy doesn't always have to be people. Sometimes it can be a thing, like a concept. So, for example, Elon Musk points out an enemy, that there's an asteroid that's going to come hit you and we're going to be wiped out. That's an enemy, even though you can love that enemy because it's a natural part of the universe.